The hardest question for people in their 20s to answer is whether or not they should focus on experiences and travel and living their best life, or if they should focus their time and energy into building their career and developing a strong foundation for the rest of their life. My name's Kathleen, I'm a registered psychologist, and I actually tried out both pathways during my 20s. So in this video, I'm going to share with you the pros and cons of each road and which one I think is the best to travel down. First up, I'm going to share with you what it was like being a backpacker and traveling around the world, and then I'll talk you through what it was like training to become a psychologist, starting my own business, and working my way up in my career. Also, I really want to highlight that if you have the choice between traveling or working, then you are at a massive advantage in your life during your 20s. These were never things I took lightly. I always acknowledged my privileges, and it's always come with me thinking about how can I use what I have to try and give back and be of service. I think it's just really important that we always come back to that. Okay, so first up, the experiences that I had during my early 20s. I chose after college to take a gap year, and I worked really hard, saved up my money, and then I went backpacking around Europe. I also spent a month in the Middle East, which was fascinating. Then during university, I was always looking for opportunities to travel, so I got to do some study in Vietnam. I also continued traveling around Europe during the semester breaks. After I finished university, I did a backpacking trip around all of Asia. After that trip, I moved straight to London, and I stayed there for the next couple of years. So in terms of my age during this whole period, it began when I was 19 and it finished at around age 25. So was devoting the first half of my 20s to travel actually worth it? Well, let's open up the box and I'll highlight the real realities. We'll look at the pros and the cons so that you can get a good sense of what it's actually like. So for me personally, going off and traveling around the world and backpacking and doing it all by myself helped me change my identity. Because before this, I was the shy, anxious, awkward girl at school. I had pretty low self-esteem. I really struggled to put myself out there. So going off on all of these random adventures and really throwing myself out of my comfort zone, it made me feel like a badass. I felt like I could do hard, scary things. And I felt like I was becoming cool travel chick. And for me, back then, that felt like an important thing to do. The second pro to this is that I think traveling and trying to have lots of experiences and getting out of your comfort zone, I think all of these things can be very healing. For me as a young person, when I think back to Kathleen during her late teens, she was very broken. I just want to give her a big hug. As a young person, I had some significant mental health problems, and I grew up in a difficult environment. So the opportunity to leave that environment and see new places, put myself in new environments, it opened me up to different facets of myself that I didn't even know existed. Learning who you are outside of what the norm is, I think it's a really healing thing to do as a young person. Finally, I can say, hand on my heart, that I have zero regrets with my life. I think when you go out and you do the things you really want to do, you have the experiences you've always wanted to. For me, it was travel. Doing that, it made me get to a point where I felt like I could die tomorrow and that was okay, because I'd done all the things I really wanted to do. I created incredible memories. I had relationships. I'd had all of these experiences, and it was just this beautiful period of my life where I felt like I was living each day as if it was my last. That is an amazing thing to do when you're young and you have the energy and time and freedom to do all the things that you really want to experience and try out for yourself. However, like with everything in life, there were big disadvantages to prioritizing experiences in my early 20s. It wasn't always glamorous. Let me just kind of open your eyes up to the cons of prioritizing experiences. So the first con was that I compared myself to friends. Devoting my time to travel and having all of these adventures was not the norm that a lot of my other friends were following. Most of them were stabilizing their lives. So they were building their way up in their career. One friend was even looking at buying an apartment. And I just remember feeling a bit bad about the choices I made and comparing my life to theirs. Just to clarify there, I was never unhappy for my friends. I'm so proud of them. The second thing is that it can be quite lonely because I was moving around so much. I was always having to make new friends and letting go of people when they traveled their separate way. I remember that when I moved to London, it really did break me open because I felt so alone. I don't think I've ever felt loneliness in this way before, because I literally knew no one on that side of the world. So that whole process of traveling and backpacking and making small talk and never really feeling like you fit in can be quite a lonely thing to experience. Final disadvantage is that if you prioritize travel, it's likely that you're gonna have less money. Of course, not this way for everyone. And when I went traveling, I usually had a lot of savings, but when you don't have money coming in, eventually when you do go back to your home country, you have nothing. You have to start over again. When I first moved to London, I didn't have any savings. I do not recommend. I did have a job lined up though, but I remember one point looking in my bank account and I only had 20 quid to last me for the next couple of weeks. And that was really scary. So yeah, if you haven't figured out a strategic way to have money coming in, then it does get kind of tight. All right, let's pivot and talk more about what it's like focusing on building a foundation during your 20s for the rest of your life. So it might be working your way up in your career, starting a side hustle, saving up to buy your own home. Let's unpack what this is like. For a little bit more context with my backstory, it was while I was living in London when I started to get more serious about building my foundation. So I started with saving up a lot of my money and being a lot more frugal and thinking about investing and how I wanted to kind of try and build a bit more financial wealth and stability in my life. And I ended up moving back to Australia during the pandemic. Good times. But I was able to get a remote job working from home. I started to make plans to go back and pursue psychology, and I started to seriously think about my career as a psychologist. On top of all of this, I decided I wanted to start my own business, and I had no idea what that was going to look like or what it would be. But I spent every single weekend teaching myself how to film YouTube videos, edit them, the whole process of YouTube. I began to really go hard at that. So during the late half of my 20s, I spent all of my time working. I was training to become a psychologist. I was working a full-time job as a provisional psych. I was also studying every chance I got. And I was starting to put together the YouTube channel, and I was releasing a video every single week, sometimes two. I still have no idea how I did that, but I was just kind of obsessed. So I'm going to talk you through the disadvantages to really going hard with your passion and trying to build a foundation, and also the pros of trying to really go hard at something. All right, the first disadvantage is that working really hard on something, like putting your all into it, it's a very lonely thing to do. Especially if you have all of these big dreams, you have to make a lot of sacrifices. During my late 20s, I rarely went out on dates. I didn't often get to see my friends, and I even lost friends because I spent so much of my time just hyper-focused on my work and training as a psych, and also studying and creating videos. All this stuff, it took up a lot of my time. I was watching my friends settle into serious relationships or go out every weekend and have all these cool adventures. It did feel quite lonely at times. However, the good thing was that I never felt a sense of FOMO, like fear of missing out. And I think that's because I'd already had like all of these cool experiences, so I didn't feel like I was lacking in any way. I just felt a little bit isolated at times. The second disadvantage was that it was really, really freaking hard. I often felt like a failure or doubted myself when I didn't see the results that I really wanted to see. I would never ever switch off. My brain was always buzzing with ideas I wanted to work on for YouTube or therapy techniques I wanted to practice. I have spent most of my weekends over the last few years of my life filming videos, and for some context, one video takes me about 15 hours of work. It is hard. On top of that, doing all the training to try and become a psychologist, which I've now made it as, that was also a lot of work and time, studying, staying after work late, doing research and writing up notes. I was just cramming all my spare time into work with my career or trying to work on my business. There's no way I can kind of sugarcoat it. It is a really hard thing to do, and it takes a lot out of you. Finally, the third disadvantage is that failing over and over again sucks. In trying to start a business, I have made so many mistakes. It's almost embarrassing thinking about all of the things I've done wrong the last 3.5 years. I think it's coming back to my why and the audience I'm trying to help and what's at the heart of this. That's what lights me up and keeps me going. So I definitely appreciate the advice of like learn through failing. However, it's just not the best feeling. All right, now let's focus on the pros of working really hard at something and trying to build yourself a foundation. If you really like what you're doing, then it's really fun. Making videos and also training to become a psychologist were two things that I really geeked out on. I became obsessed obsessed. I wanted to be the best psychologist I could be, or try and make the best videos I could make. Working really hard at that, devoting a lot of time to that, it can be, on the flip side to like failing and stuff, it can be really, really fun when you start to see a little bit of progress. I became so obsessed, spending so much time trying to get better at these things. In a way, that's kind of a fun thing to do. The second thing is that I have so much purpose with what I'm doing. I love helping psychology students. I really enjoy helping my clients. I love my job. I love making videos. All of this kind of connects back to a sense of deeper purpose. It aligns with one of my core values, which is being of service to others, helping people. The final advantage, number 3, is that it's very stable. Focusing on building your foundation, and whatever way that looks like, whether you're studying full-time or you're working full-time, you're trying to devote some time to starting a business, it helps you create a sense of routine in your day. It just creates a bit of a safety net, I think, over your life. You can just hone in and focus on something. I guess I feel like that stability is a really great way to thrive because you're starting to put the building blocks in for the rest of your life. So now that we've dissected all of that, what should you do with your 20s? What should you focus on? Travel and experiences, or building a solid foundation for yourself? I actually do sort of have an answer to this. And I think my work as a psychologist also helps bear a little bit of weight in answering this question, because I have experience working with people throughout their lifespan and getting a sense of the ebbs and flows of life. So what is the best thing for a young person to do? I actually think it's the wrong question to be asking yourself. In your 20s, I think what you should come back to is figuring out what your purpose is, what you want to make your life about, what you want to take a stand for. And those are really hard questions to answer. A lot of people don't really know, and they're not things that are going to come to you. Like, no one's going to say, hey, you should do this. And it's not going to feel comfortable or easy when you start. I certainly had no idea I wanted to become a psychologist. I didn't figure that out until I was about 23 years old. And even then, I still was pretty unsure. I had a lot of doubt about the profession. The only way you figure out your purpose and you figure out what to do with your life is just by trying things out. I know that's kind of an annoying answer because there's fear of making mistakes and there's fear of messing things up, and that probably will happen. But figuring out what your purpose is and what you really want to do with your life requires you to try stuff. It's okay to have a purpose for one phase of your life and transition into a new purpose for another phase. Life is not a standstill. Life is movement. Life is different phases. You don't have to pick the perfect thing for your whole life. You just have to try and give something a go and always come back to, how does this connect to my values? How does this connect to the person I want to show up as and the person I want to be? How does this connect to my deeper sense of purpose? It was such a beautiful thing to make this video, and it also felt a little bit vulnerable, that I do believe it's important to share these experiences with young people so you can develop some insights, some perspective. I realized too, for a bit of context, I'm 29, about to turn 30, so I'm about to exit my 20s, but I really hope that you got something out of watching this, and I wish you all the best of luck with this crazy adventure that is life. Hopefully I will see you in another video. Take good care of yourself, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!